Primetime Fantasy Football is brought to you by Next Level Radio. Head to nextlevelradioonline.com for past episodes of Primetime Fantasy Football and the Showcast, plus celebrity guest spotlight. Now on to this week's Primetime Fantasy Football.
People I never thought about associating with. I don't know what it is. Talk to me. Check it out. Hey, front of it, cause we're the mansion on my land. Full jacuzzis and my neighbors can't stand the way I live. This zone so fast. Ain't got your ladies and prime time is on.
Whoa, Dion. It's not that kind of prime time.
Yeah, man, it's Primetime Fantasy Football on Next Level Radio.
Well, alright.
Welcome into this week's Primetime Fantasy Football podcast going into week number 5. I am solo in my own little studio here today as Joe is also joining via Epix this week, and Steve Richards is joining us from LA via Epix. How you guys doing this lovely, at least in Pennsylvania, lovely evening?
Beautiful.
Oh, well, it never rains here, so.
Can't complain then, I guess. Before we get started, want to remind everybody to check us out on Twitter at NXT Level Radio. You can also check Joe out at JoeyWeb32. The Web stands for Webster because that is, in fact, his last name. He's very good like that. Steve Richards is at SRichards31 because he's also good like that. And mine is at AdamNextLevel. I'm not telling you my last name in my Twitter handle. So, also, follow us on, or like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Next Level Radio Online. Check out our rankings. Will be posted on nextlevelradioonline.com, along with our highs and lows. And Joe, follow him on Twitter, but he also does some Green Bay Packers stuff for FantasyPros.com.
Pros.
Yeah, I'll get it eventually. And then check Steve's blog out, StevenRichards.net. So I think that is it. Let's get right into things and recap last week's high, lows, and zero to hero, and don't buy the hype. So I'll start things off. I hit on Terrence Williams. He had 6 catches on 7 targets for 77 yards and 2 touchdowns for 19.7 points. He plays the Texans this week, 19th most against wide receivers in 2014, also known as the 12th least, I think, 13th least maybe. So how you guys feeling about Terrence Williams this week? I personally kind of just liked him last week because of the matchup. I'm not sure that I'm inserting him this week, especially because there's only 2 teams on a bye. Joe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you. I'm not sure if Terrence Williams is the kind of guy I'm going to feel comfortable putting in my lineup every week. I still think that this is a run-first team while DeMarco Murray is healthy. But, with only a couple teams on a bye, maybe a flex spot depending on if you're weak at running back, but I probably would not have him in my lineup this weekend.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's not a particularly good matchup against the Texans, and I think the Cowboys are going to run more. I think Joe's pretty much said everything, so I would agree there.
Yeah, I mean, DeMarco Murray, I don't think he has scored under 17 points this year as of yet. So until he gets hurt or suspended for some reason, like running backs do, keep plugging him in there regardless of matchup and all that stuff. Let's move on to Lamar Miller. Hit on him, 64 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Both my guys scored 2 touchdowns, which actually saved them. But 2 catches on 2 targets for 3 yards and a lost fumble, 16.7 points. On a bye this week, so no need to talk about him. So let's go on to the next one. Who had Colin Kaepernick?
That was me. He had 218 yards against the Eagles. And actually, I think the Eagles, overall, if you watch that game, actually did a pretty good job of bottling up for the most part. And one of the things the defense did that they haven't done all year is they got some pressure on him. But he came through big with the 2 touchdowns and a couple rushing plays. Just like I kind of talked about last week, I was worried that he was going to rush and hurt them, and a couple big first downs he got with his legs. But with the 2 touchdowns and the 58 rushing yards, it got him over the 20-point mark. So we count that as a green.
Yeah, watching that game, I actually didn't realize he had 21 points. It felt like less.
Yeah, I thought they like I said, they did a pretty good job of bottling up. They got pressure on him. He looked confused. He was he really had a couple mistakes with time management, but I think his the 58 rushing yards definitely help you get the extra 5 points to push you over that 20-point mark. This week he's got the Chiefs, who are giving up the 15th most points against QBs. We'll start with Steve. What do you think of Colin Kaepernick this week?
Yeah, I did the quarterback rankings again this week, so I have him as in my lineup. I have him in the top 12 as a starter. So, and it's kind of along the same lines that you were at, Adam, with the 21 points. With these running quarterbacks, you don't realize how many points they score because he only threw for 215 yards. So
Yeah, take away the rushing yards, he would have had 16 points.
Exactly,
Or 15 points.
which is probably the difference. I mean, certainly in a fair number of leagues, is a difference between a win and a loss. So these running quarterbacks will do it for you. So I have him as a starter this week.
Yeah, I agree. I would put him just inside, a top 12, like Steve has him at number 12. Same reason. I mean, he's not gonna blow you away with passing stats because they are a run-first offense, and even though they've gotten away from that the past couple weeks, I think they're going to slowly start getting back to that because that's kind of what... I mean, Frank Gore was gashing the Eagles, and I mean, we can talk about that a little bit. I think the Eagles' run offense is a little overrated. They made Trent Richardson look good, so I have no problem, moving forward. They play the Rams this week. I would start Zach Stacy relatively confidently. Going against this Eagles defense because their defense overall is poor. Actually, their secondary looked better than we all kind of thought they would, and their rush defense looked worse than we thought they would. But I have no problem with Kaepernick being a starter this week.
Yeah, I'm into that. I guess I'll take the next one. It was a combined low or a combined high between Joe and I. We both had Donald Brown, and we both missed on it.
Big time.
Yeah.
I think everybody did.
Yeah. He had 10 carries for 19 whole yards, and then 4 catches for 35 yards, and didn't do anything else. He scored 5.4 points, so that surely was a miss, but we can also look forward here. I have them as at the Chargers, which obviously isn't true because he plays for the Chargers. they're playing the Jets this week, who have given up the least amount of points to running backs so far in 2014. So where are you guys standing here as far as where Donald Brown is and how confident you are in starting him going forward for Week 5?
Yeah, I mean, he's got, I think it's 1.97 yards per carry, 41 rushes for 81 yards. It's just not good. I mean, everybody if he can't run well against the Jaguars and the type of game that they had this week, I'm not very confident putting him in at all until I see better, especially against the Jets defense like this. Now he may still have a good game. That's not saying he's definitely not going to, but when you win 33-14, you're up. I think they were up. They only scored 6 points so they were up 27-14 in the fourth quarter. And you can't run against the Jaguars. I see problems there. So I probably would bench him this week. And there's a chance that he does better. But for the time being, I'm keeping him on my bench.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't drop him just yet, especially if you're weak at running back.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not mistaken, I'll have to check the schedule. I think they have Oakland next week, so coming up in Week 6. So hopefully you can just keep him on your bench. Don't drop him unless you have some really pressing needs you have to go for. And he may be a guy who gets a chance to prove himself again in Week 6 because I don't believe that Matthews will be back by then. I was really disappointed. I actually picked him up in a league a week early, anticipating this start against Jacksonville and thought he would come out huge. And I didn't expect him to average 5 yards a carry. I just thought the number of carries he would get, he'd at least produce 60, 70 yards with the possibility of a touchdown. And then when Woodhead goes down, you're thinking, all right, he'll be used more in the receiving game, maybe catch a touchdown. So this was a major disappointment for me this week. But I'm going to keep him on my bench this week and hope that maybe he bounces back for a matchup against Oakland.
And it is Oakland in Week 6, so you got that right. So yeah, it might be maybe just give him a week off and, like you said, shoot for next week.
Yeah, give him a week of rest on your bench.
Yeah. Let him rest up. They're also pass first at this point, so.
Rivers is slinging it.
Sure
and
is.
I think you talked about that last week. That Rivers still likes to sling it, but it's the Jaguars, so you're still high on Brown.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought they'd get up big and they'd just run the ball towards the end of the game.
Yeah.
Which they did get up big, but the run game just wasn't there.
Yeah, decided to throw it instead.
Yep.
The other one that I missed all by myself was Michael Crabtree. he had 5 catches for 43 yards and nothing else for 4.3 points. And then looking forward to Week 5, obviously, he plays the Chiefs. They're 16th most against wide receivers as opposed to 15th most against quarterbacks in 2014. So where are you guys stacking up Michael Crabtree as far as playing him in Week 5 goes?
I'm still maybe like a wide receiver, high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2. I mean, I'm just not in general high on Crabtree. I just don't like the consistency there. I think there's guys who are more consistent. And as I always like to mention, I think I would rather have Kelvin Benjamin starting over Crabtree if I had to pick between the two. My boy.
Yeah, I think you were the highest on him coming in the beginning of the year, and I agree with that.
Yeah, I just think where you probably drafted Crabtree before Benjamin, but at this point I would feel more confident putting Benjamin in week to week, and we'll talk about him a little later. I think I have him in our dig it or ditch it, but yeah, I mean, with only the 2 buys, and you're looking at the buys, it's Oakland and Miami this week. So other than Mike Wallace, maybe James Jones that you have on the bench, you're probably not too much thinner at wide receiver this week than you are normal weeks. So if you have somebody else, and you can check our rankings, Joe will be handling them this week, and I think we're all sticking with the same positions going forward. If you have somebody else on the rankings above him, I wouldn't feel unconfident going with them. But he's going to have some big games, but it's just kind of, I just think he'll have a little inconsistency this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that he did practice today. I know if you watched that game, you saw he was rolling out his foot. I think he's dealing with some plantar fasciitis in one of his feet. But he did practice today, which is a good thing. Depending on the way your draft strategy went this year, if you went with a quarterback and a tight end earlier, maybe heavy running back, you may have drafted Crabtree as your number 2 receiver. I wouldn't be pumped about that right now. I still think he's a solid flex because he has the possibility of putting up a huge week in that offense, but yeah, I don't know about this week if you need him in your lineup. Maybe as a flex though.
Yeah, my other thing is you mentioned a little bit that he's hurt again, so he seems like he might be closer to injury prone than not at this point in his career.
Yeah,
right.
So it's all about trusting him as well, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about not starting him, and then when I saw that he did practice today, I'm a little bit more confident in him in being able to play this week.
Didn't Bernard Pierce practice all last week and then he didn't even play?
He did, yeah. I think that's pretty rare too. I mean, I think he was actually made active for the game, but then just didn't play at all.
Yeah, he was active.
Yeah. So I mean, that's not often you see something like that. So I think that, but yeah, I mean, like you said, things happen.
We can talk about that in a little bit because I think someone had Lorenzo on their list. I think it was you, Joe. So let's move on to our lows. I was low on Cam. Only had 197 yards, a touchdown, and only 7 rushing yards. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous for Cam Newton. 12.58 points. Plays the Bears this week. 7th most points against QBs in 2014. So this is kind of like a good matchup to a guy who normally, you're probably licking your chops. But this year, how do you guys feel about him this week going in against the Bears?
I think if you watch what Aaron Rodgers did last week against the Bears, you got to feel pretty happy and maybe pretty confident. The only thing that I would say is maybe negative is that there's been a bunch of quarterbacks that have kind of stepped up in the last few weeks that you may have on your bench that you may feel more confident with the matchup. But if you are somebody who only drafts one quarterback and Cam Newton's the only guy you have, I think against the Bears, I think that's a pretty solid matchup.
Yeah, for me, I think this has shootout potential at least to it. It looks like Carolina's defense isn't exactly what we thought Carolina's defense was. So I think there's a lot of shootout potential, and Cam Newton never shied away from a little competition. He's a gamer, and he'll go as hard as he can for as long as he can, no matter what these injuries that he has. So
yeah, and
go ahead.
I was just gonna say he only had 2 rushes in that entire game.
Yeah, that could be part of the injury thing that we were talking about. But I think that he'll have a lot more opportunity to rack up more passing yards as well as the rushing yards. So I think he'll definitely have a bit of a bounce back.
Yeah, I think he's kind of a buy low guy right now. I'm not 100% confident at least having to start him for the next few weeks, but once he gets healthy, I mean, they're still holding him back a little bit, and you can tell. And even Ron Rivera had said yesterday, and we're recording this Wednesday, by the way, he said yesterday that you don't want to unleash him until he's ready to be unleashed. So, I mean, that's just showing you that they're holding him back, until he's 100%. And, he's not having any setbacks, so it's just going to be week to week. And I think 1 week you're going to see him, kind of blow back out and score, give you that 20, 25 point range. And then from then on, you can feel confident about him. But just for now, I would buy low if I can have him as my backup for a couple weeks. If you can get away with another guy, maybe even like a Roethlisberger, he has a good matchup this week. If you can buy low on him, I think if you can make it into the playoffs, you're going to have a pretty solid quarterback going into the playoffs.
He did come on late last year.
And I agree. I was actually going to bring that up as a buy low candidate. The only thing I'd be worried about now is that their running game is really non-existent. I mean, all three of their running backs, I think, have been injured, so they're going to somebody who
Reeves, this week.
What's that?
Reeves is their starter this week.
Yeah, Reeves is going to be their starter this week, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do. But that would be my only issue, is that they really don't have much of a run game, so they're going to probably really key in on Cam Newton this week.
Yeah, and we can talk about that real quick. Do you guys, are you picking up and starting Reeves, Whitaker, or Ogbanaya at all? Any of them?
I hope not.
Or Obanaya?
Yeah, no kidding.
Unless you're in a really deep league and you really are just hurting. Maybe you're the guy who drafted Adrian Peterson and Ray Rice. And you're hurting really badly, but I can't imagine a situation. I hope no one out there listening has a situation where they have to worry about starting one of those guys. Hopefully they were able to get somebody else, maybe one of the Baltimore Ravens running backs, one of the other ones besides Ray Rice, maybe some of the guys, maybe one of the Vikings running backs, who I like their matchup this week. So hopefully you're not starting a Carolina running back.
Yeah, and looking at Reeves, I mean, he did get 12 carries last week, only 26 yards. Baltimore is a good rush defense, so maybe a little bit more favorable of a matchup, but I think it's going to be a little committee-ish. I mean, I think you see him maybe get another 12 carries this week, but then you see like Whitaker get 6 or 7, and you see Obanaya get a couple.
Maybe, yeah.
Steve, how you feeling about Cam this week? Did you already say?
Yeah, I'm into the shootout type, but yeah, I certainly wouldn't start any of the running backs, and you won't find somebody, or you might, but you'll find few people that are as big a fan of Fozzie Whitaker as I am, considering he went to Texas, and I'm a Texas fan, and his name's Fozzie, but I'm still not playing him this week.
Yeah, I think actually I agree with you there. I like Fozzie better than Reeves in the long run. If Stewart and Williams miss multiple games,
I'm good with that. The next on the low, I actually had the tandem of Reggie Bush and Joique Bell, and they actually hit on both. Reggie had 6.5 points, while Joique Bell ended up with 3.9 points. So neither one of them really performed well at all, which was kind of expected. This week, they'll go up against the Bills, who give up the 6th least points to running backs so far this year, but Joique Bell has a concussion, so that may boost Reggie Bush's potential here. So where are you guys at sitting with maybe Reggie Bush? I think at this point maybe avoid Joique Bell, but at least that's where I might stand. But where are you guys sitting?
Yeah, I mean, monitor him up to game time. If he's active, I'm okay with you playing him. But by the way, I was going to let you know, Steve, if only one of them hit and the other one had like a huge game, I would have had to give you a yellow.
Well, yeah, of course, but that didn't, so I gave myself a straight green light.
Yeah, true that. That's like a double green. Yeah, I mean, they play one, so as far as Joique Bell's status goes, you shouldn't have much to worry about as far as worrying if you're going to start him. But if he doesn't play, it definitely boosts Bush's value, and just in a PPR league, we say this all the time. So I like Bush in a PPR. If Bell doesn't play, I like Bush in any league.
Yeah, and Joique Bell did not practice today, so obviously monitor it as it goes on. And if Bell is out, I agree with you guys. I think even if against a tough Bills defense, Reggie Bush is going to get some carries. He's going to catch them out of the backfield. So I think he's going to at least get a good total yardage together with the possibility of a touchdown. The next two lows are me that I hit on. One of them I had no problem hitting on. That's Tom Brady. I really thought that he has just struggled week after week, and on Monday night, if you watch that game, it was really bad. Now, you can maybe make the argument it's not just Tom Brady, it's the offensive line not giving him time and other things, but either way, it doesn't really matter why it's happening. Just Tom Brady sucks right now. 159 yards, only has one touchdown. 6.36 points in a standard league. And this weekend he's going up against the Bengals, who have given up the third fewest points to QB to quarterbacks in 2014. So I'm going to go ahead and say I didn't put him on my low list because I didn't want to do the same guy twice in a week. But if I had another guy, he probably would have been it. I would not be excited about starting him. And matter of fact, in a 10-team standard league where he was my quarterback, I went and picked up Carson Palmer. And as long as he's playing this weekend, I'll be putting him over Tom Brady this week.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. And you're welcome from all of us to everybody who bet on that game. For letting you know that the Chiefs were going to win that outright. So
Home dog at night, baby.
yeah, there was no worries there. I think we called that one pretty well. And Carson Palmer is seeking a second opinion on his shoulder, so that's not necessarily a good thing. But initially before last week they're like, oh, Palmer's definitely going to play Week 5. Now it's looking a little less likely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if he is playing, I have no problem starting him over Brady. I'm looking for somebody. I like I had mentioned Roethlisberger. I would take him over Brady. He's playing, I think, Jacksonville this week. So I mean, there's a bunch of guys that I would rather start over Tom Brady. And Steve, I'll let you take over from here because you got him on your quarterback rankings pretty low.
Yeah, you guys ready for this number? I got Tom Brady 19th on the quarterback rankings this week.
I've got no problem with that.
Yeah.
It's so
I haven't
low
seen
for
your,
Tom
I
Brady.
haven't seen your rankings, but I can probably name 15 to 18 guys off the top of my head that I'd rather have over him right now.
Yeah, especially playing the Bengals.
Right.
It's just a terrible matchup, and it's just not just avoid Tom Brady at this point. You just can't trot him out there and expect to have quarterback points. You gotta let go of the name at this point and just go and get somebody who's going to produce more. Just look at the numbers.
Adam, have you seen his rankings yet?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to get your thoughts, and without looking at his rankings, who would you rather... Now, this is a tough matchup for him, but would you rather have Tom Brady or Kirk Cousins this weekend against Seattle?
Yeah, Steve has him lower than Tom Brady.
Okay.
And I think I would agree with that just because of the matchup. Kirk Cousins looked terrible last week, and I know it was a Thursday night, but I think Seattle is going to watch that film and just unleash. And I think he's is somebody on a Seattle list this week? I thought
I have him.
you have Morris. Okay,
I have Stafford Morris.
yeah. So I guess we'll talk about Seattle a little bit later. But yeah, I would rather have Tom Brady over Kirk Cousins, but I'm not happy with either of those.
I would too, and I'm not surprised to see Blake Bortles above Tom Brady in there. But the funny, I actually agree with it.
Bortles time, boys.
Yeah, and if Bridgewater was playing on a Sunday and you could guarantee he was going to play, I would like him over Brady too. But it's a Thursday night and he might not even play. So I guess I'm next. Or no, still with Joe.
Joe's got another one.
Steve, this is the one that hurts. This is the one that I wanted a big red light on.
We got a big red on Monday.
Yeah, how about? All right, so I had LaShawn McCoy. He had 10 rushes for 17 yards. I know we picked an over-under of 10 points, and both of you said over, and I said the under. I was closest. He only had 1.7 points. It was really tough to watch him. And right now I know there's a lot. If you're active on Twitter in the fantasy football, searching that, you could see a lot of people are really wondering what to do with LaShawn McCoy, whether they should sell him, whether they should hold on to him, and anything like that. So going forward, guys, do you think this is somebody, if we were starting this season today, not, it's going to be really tough for him to catch up. Do you think he ends up as a top 5 running back from here on out?
Whew, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm going to say yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just going to say yes. But Joe, you have him on a list this week, right? So do you want to hold off on really digging into LaShawn? Or
yeah, we could do that. Yeah, we could do that. Sure, wait.
All right, so I'll take the next one. Then I got T.Y. Hilton, 6 catches on 10 targets for 105 yards and 5 rushes. Somehow that adds up to 12 points. I'm not sure. I guess that's with a point for a bonus, 100 yards.
Yes.
And if you don't have bonus, it's 11 points. So that's a yellow. He plays the Ravens this week, 8th most against wide receivers in 2014. How do you feel about the inconsistent T.Y. Hilton this week?
I don't think you can feel confident any week starting him. I think you're going to put him in your lineup some weeks, he's going to hit big for you, or he's going to be on your bench some weeks and he's going to hit big for you. I would not be confident because you just never know what you're going to get out of him.
Yeah, by the way, I said he was last week. I said he was catching just under 50% of his targets. He got just barely over 50% this week. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked. I don't know if he drops it a lot or if luck is just missing him or if they're on separate pages. But when you see him consistently get high targets, you would rather him be a little closer to 10 than 6 more often than not.
It's not as bad as Macklin.
This is true.
Yeah, I was going to say, I find it hard to believe that any of that could be Luck's fault. I mean, Luck right now is the top quarterback in fantasy, so there may be some kind of disconnect between him and between Luck and Hilton. Maybe they're just not on the same page on some of these routes. So I don't think it's Andrew Luck at all.
No, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I'm completely in the camp with Joe, where you really have no idea what you're gonna get, and for me, what that says to me is that you just look at the matchup, when the Ravens give up the 8th most points, you can say, okay, go for it.
Yeah,
right.
Just because you go exactly with the matchup, and he's got a good matchup this week. So, if you're looking for a flex or you start 3 wide receivers in a league, I would probably go with T.Y. Hilton this week, and next week, if he's playing against a team that has the 8th least points to wide receivers, then you sit him.
Yep.
It's kind of annoying, but it's kind of the way you have to play it at this point, I guess, with T.Y. Hilton.
How do you look at Reggie Wayne? Same way, or you're okay putting him like wide receiver 3, maybe a flex each week, or how's that work?
Well, for me, since this podcast has started, I've said that I've been higher on Reggie Wayne than Adam, and I think higher than most. So I'm going to start Reggie Wayne. If I have Reggie Wayne, I think most weeks, unless he's got an absolutely terrible matchup.
I've come around on him.
Yeah, I've heard changes in your voice. But,
the way I look at him is different.
Yeah, but I'm playing him either way. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I was quite as high as you, Steve, but I've always thought that he this year was a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 potential, and I think especially in PPR leagues, he's doing really well. Him and Andrew Luck seem to be on a much better page, I guess, than him and T.Y. Hilton. So I would not be afraid starting Reggie Wayne most weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last low, this will actually close out real quick because he's got a bye this week, is James Jones. I had on my low list. He went 6 for 6 on catches with 83 yards for 8.3 points, which I consider pretty much right down the middle, / pretty much where he was projected, so I guess that's a yellow. And then, like I said, he's on bye this week, so we don't have anything to talk about this week as far as playing him or anything.
All right,
I'd sit him.
Yeah.
That's good work, Joe.
Maybe in a 16-team league.
Yeah, you may want to play him.
Let's go to our 0 to hero. A little bit of a rougher week here. Let's start off with Joe. I think you had Eddie Lacy.
I did. I had Eddie Lacy, and the touchdown really saved him. I watched this game, and I was really big since I'm a correspondent for Green Bay on the Fantasy Pros website. I mean, all I read all preseason was how great Eddie Lacy looked, how much he's been working on his pass catching abilities because they wanted him to be better out of the backfield.
He had a catch.
Catching the ball. He did have a catch, you're right.
He had a catch.
And 2 targets for 11 yards, but it's just not been there. And I don't know if it really is Eddie Lacy's fault or it's the line's fault. I mean, it didn't look like he had anywhere to run, or he just wasn't hitting the holes that were there for him. This was for every week I've been saying, hold off on Eddie Lacy. He's going to get there. He's going to get there. And I'll be honest with you, if I'm an Eddie Lacy owner right now, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's like you said with Tom Brady. It doesn't matter why it's happening. The fact that
Right.
it's happening is what's going on. So if he's not producing, then he's not producing. That's kind of the way it is. So
yeah, and we saw this 2 years ago. You had Doug Martin, the rookie, who had one of the best seasons and was awesome, and then Eddie Lacy as a rookie has a great season, and we all just assume, he's a top 5, 6, 7 pick, that he's just going to be good because he's on a good offense, but it just hasn't been there yet this year. And if it wasn't for that touchdown, I mean, you're talking 48 rushing yards. You're talking 4.8 points.
yeah, we were in one of those areas where if he had 119 yards rushing and no touchdowns, but still scored the same amount of points, I probably would have given you a better
Agreed.
rating.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
yeah.
the fact that he only had 48 yards.
Who has more points here to the end of the season, Eddie Lacy or LaShawn McCoy?
Man,
Go ahead.
I'd still say McCoy. I just don't think there's any way, especially with Nick Foles struggling right now, that they're going to completely get away from the run. So I think he's going to have more opportunities, and I just think with Rodgers throwing the way he was in the last couple games, I think they can rely more heavily on the pass than the Eagles can.
I would agree. I would say McCoy.
Yeah, I was actually going to say Lacy, but you brought up a lot of good points. But I'm really low.
For once.
I'm really low on McCoy right now, and it's a lot of because of the offensive line. None of them are playing. So,
Yeah.
which sucks, but it's the way it is. But
Well, how do you?
good points with the Eagles just run more as a fact.
Yeah, how do you like Lacy, by the way, this week against the Vikings? 13th most running back so far this year.
It's a good
like
matchup. Yeah, it's a good match. I don't know what the numbers were like last week when Joe had him in the 0 to hero, but it's another good matchup this week. So
I like him. Yeah, I like him because I think a Thursday night game is a prime time game is a good game for him to actually put. I think you see like an Alfred Morris type game like Morris had last week, maybe a touchdown gets him up to like 14, 15 points. So yeah, I mean obviously you're not benching him anyway, so maybe it's a moot point, but. Let's move on to Steve and I. We both missed on ours. I had Shane Vereen. He had 8 carries for 26 yards, 5 catches. I gotta stop getting these guys in the red because when we highlight these guys red, it's hard to read their stats. 5 catches on 5 targets for 41 yards, 6.7 points. Going against the Bengals this week, 8th least points to running backs this year. Even though he's kind of like a running back slash wide receiver-ish with his 5 catches. In a PPR, I'm still okay with him this week. In a standard, I'm not playing him if I don't have to. How about Joe? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I basically agree. I think if it's in a standard league, there's so many more running backs I'd rather have. But if it's a PPR, I think he's tough to bench, especially this week when I think they're going to struggle and they're going to be passing a lot. I think they're going to be down big like they were on Monday night. And with that happening, maybe Shane Vereen catches a bunch out of the backfield. So I think in a PPR, he should probably be in your lineup, but in standard league, keep him on their bench.
Yeah, I'm not excited about either, to be honest. The Bengals are really good on defense. We talked about this a couple weeks in a row now, and I don't know. New England just seems listless on offense and punchless or whatever less word you're looking for. They just don't seem like they have anything on offense at this point. And it runs through Brady or runs through the line or no matter who it runs through, it's just not happening right now. So
it's not running at all.
Yeah, they're not.
Right.
They're not running. Yeah, I wouldn't be excited about it.
No.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't have too much experience with PPR leagues, but I guess he would have scored 11 points in a PPR league, which is pretty good. So last week. So I don't know. I guess that works. But
Sure.
I still don't think that I would play him. Certainly not in a standard like you guys were saying.
Right.
The 0 to hero that I missed on was Andre Johnson,
And I did not put him on my list this week.
yeah, who has been missed every week. He had 6 catches. He only had 7 targets. He had 71 yards, but he also lost a fumble, so he only ended up with 5.1 points there. But this week, if you want to put him on the 0 to hero list, he's got the Cowboys. 3rd fewest points to wide receivers so far this year. So.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like beginning of the year, if I told you 4 weeks in, after the teams they faced, including the Niners and the Titans, would you have thought that the Cowboys would be 3rd fewest to wide receivers?
No, they would have said they had the worst defense there ever was.
Yeah. If I don't. Andre Johnson might not even play. I mean, he didn't practice today. He hurt his ankle on Sunday. So I'm like a guy who's been struggling who now has an injured ankle. It's just a huge red flag for me, and I'd much rather if I was the DeAndre Hopkins owner and somebody offered me Andre Johnson, I think I would turn that down. As weird as that sounds.
I don't think that sounds weird at all.
I mean, as weird as it would have sounded, I guess, maybe at the beginning of the year. But, I mean, he had a decent game, 6 for 71. That fumble cost him a couple points. So it's not a bad game, but where are the touchdowns? I mean, he just hasn't had any.
That's what's hurting him right now is that each game, if you look at his numbers, he's actually had 60, 70 yards each game. So the receiving yards aren't there, but he's not able to get into the end zone right now. And that's the reason I was big on him 2 weeks before, because I thought the targets were there, the yards were there. He's just missing that touchdown. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, last year he had a stretch where he wasn't getting much, and then he had like a 2 or 3 touchdown game, and then a week or two later he had a 2 touchdown game. So I still think they're going to come, But right now, if I had both of those receivers and I only had one spot, and that's DeAndre Hopkins or Andre Johnson, I'm putting in DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, I have DeAndre Hopkins, so thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, do you see him as a buy low, or is that kind of wait and see type of thing? Because I mean, I might buy low on him, but not. I wouldn't give up a lot. You know what I mean? I would, maybe give up.
That would be buying low.
That's yeah, unfortunately, I think the owner of Andre Johnson, unless they are just totally fed up and they have enough good wide receivers, I don't think they're just going to give him up because they know what he is capable of doing.
Right.
But so I think, unfortunately, if you have him, you just got to hang on to him. And he may have to sit on the bench a couple of weeks, but I don't think you're going to be able to get anything for him.
Yeah, I mean, he probably will play this weekend, and this will probably, now that he's not on a list, he'll probably score a touchdown. But
this will be the week.
Yeah, let's recap our Don't Buy the Hype. I was on the opposite end of Steve. I had Michael Crabtree, 5 catches on 8 targets, we already said. We already talked a little about him playing the Chiefs, so let's move on to Steve's.
Yeah, just so we're clear that Adam hit on that. Actually, we all hit this week, which is good.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think I missed.
What we lacked in Zero to Hero, we made up for in Don't Buy the Hype.
Yeah, but Joe's going to be harder on himself.
That's
but I'll go first with LeGarrette Blount. He had 4 carries for 25 yards for 2.5 points, which essentially is exactly what I said. So I'm going to go ahead and toot my own horn. They play they play the Jags this week, who still give up the 3rd most points to running backs. But to me, that makes me happy if I'm a Le'Veon Bell owner and not necessarily a LeGarrette Blount owner. I'm kind of over LeGarrette Blount at this point, but maybe one of you guys aren't.
No, I'm low on him too. I love Le'Veon Bell this week. I think I have the running back ranking, so he'll probably be. I have to look, but he'll probably end up being in my top 5. If you're the rankings might be up Thursday night, so if you're listening to this before then, check back Thursday night on nextlevelradioonline.com. But yeah, I love Le'Veon Bell this week for sure.
Yeah, and then you gave me the green light for Taliaferro with 15 carries, 58 yards, and a touchdown, so a total of 11.8 points. I'd probably give myself actually a red on that. I think
I would say
if you had Taliaferro, what's that?
I would say yellow.
Maybe a yellow. I think if you have Taliaferro, you weren't starting him in anything probably other than a flex spot. And if you're getting 11.8 points out of your flex from a guy who you picked off waivers, I think you're actually going to be pretty happy with that. So he actually did a lot better than I expected, and I also expected Bernard Pierce to be back. So the reason I put him on my list was I just thought it was going to be a messy backfield, and you just had no idea which running back was going to be the one that hit, if any of them did. And since he was the hot pickup last week, that's why I put him on there. But I guess if you picked him up and put him in your lineup, if he was in your flex spot, I think 11.8 points I'd be pretty happy with. So maybe a yellow. I think I would have probably been a little tougher and gave myself a red on that, but
you thought Pierce was going to play, and we all kind of did.
I did.
And he might play this week. So how do you think about Taliaferro this week if Pierce plays or doesn't play against the Colts, 14th most to running backs?
If Pierce is out again, which I don't think is going to happen, but if Pierce was out, I definitely feel higher on Taliaferro. If Pierce is back, I don't know what to expect from the 3 of them. I think Pierce is the guy who I want the least, to be honest with you.
At this point, I think so. I mean, seeing that he was active and just, they decided not to play him says a lot. So, initially, I know we were talking last week. Sorry. I know we were just talking about last week, who we'd rather have rest of the season or anything like that. And Pierce was, I think, 1st or 2nd on my list. I'm dropping that now because, that the fact that he didn't play last week speaks volumes.
I think they may give him the first shot if he does play this weekend, but I think long-term, Taliaferro or even Forsett may be the guy you want. Forsett's actually running pretty well right now. But if all 3 of them are in there, I'd avoid them this week. Just hopefully you have a better option where you know the guy's going to get the majority of the carries.
Yeah, and you should. You probably didn't draft Taliaferro or Forsett, so I mean, hopefully you got a couple other guys that you're more confident.
And again, as you said, with only a couple guys in a bye, you're hopefully not hurting at running back that bad.
Taliaferro or Vereen?
I think standard Taliaferro, and I think I may go PPR Vereen because I think pass catching is Forsett's job there. So
yeah, you are correct.
Yeah,
I like Taliaferro, but it's probably because I only have him on both my teams. So.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to week number 5. right, kicking things off. I'll kick things off with the high-lows. We'll start off with highs. I'm high on Delaney Walker this week going up against Cleveland. He has right now the 4th best average points among tight ends for the year. Another favorable matchup this week. Doesn't matter who's at quarterback. I think they're going to look Delaney Walker's way. How do you guys feel about Delaney? Actually, no. I'll go my other one, and then you can tell me about both of them. So my next one would be Brandon Cooks going up against Tampa Bay. He has the 2nd highest targets on New Orleans. Jimmy Graham is the 1st. 6 more targets than Colston for the year. Bucks are not good against the pass. This is a matchup that I like a lot for Graham and Cooks. And maybe even Colston could have a pretty decent game here, but I just like Cooks over Colston. How do you guys feel about Walker and Cooks?
Go
I
ahead,
like both
Joe.
of them. Yeah, I think I like both of them. I think the way that tight ends are right now, I mean, it's pretty much the first 3 or 4 guys and then a bunch of I don't even know what to call them. It's just not as I think at the beginning of the year everybody expected tight ends to be a lot more deep, and it really is really top heavy. I mean, unless you've got one of the top guys. But I think Walker's been one of those guys who's just week in and week out is putting up solid numbers. So I like that. And with Brandon Cooks, just the amount of targets that he's getting, you got to be happy about that. Colston saw a couple more this week, which if you're a Colston owner is a good thing. But I think that New Orleans recognizes the playmaking ability of Cooks, and they're going to keep feeding him the ball.
Yeah, I do the tight end rankings as well as the quarterback rankings, and have Delaney Walker 5. So starting there, Cleveland's a great matchup for him. And,
I actually started Walker over Davis this past week, and I'm glad I did because Davis ended up getting hurt. Even if Davis plays this week, I know he's had some back problems, but I'm still playing Walker.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Just because, like you said, Davis is hurt. It hasn't been all that good when he's been in either. So there's definitely, I would definitely go Delaney Walker over Davis.
He's more touchdown dependent, I would say, Vernon Davis is
For sure. And then as far as Brandon Cooks is concerned, I'm kind of meh on that, but only because of the New Orleans wide receiver type of thing, where it could be anybody during any week. I guess it's getting less like that and more Brandon Cooks show with the targets and things like that. But for me, it could go either way. For me, I know Tampa Bay is a good matchup. So
yeah,
I have Drew Brees as my number 1 ranked quarterback this week as well. So I kind of think everybody's going to do well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Cooks is a guy that I'm confident starting week to week, or I mean every week. But this week, I just like the matchup, and I think he's gonna. And they're in the dome at home against a divisional opponent that they probably know pretty well. And the Bucs are just not good. I mean, you saw what the Falcons did against them.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. And if he ends up green next week, I wouldn't be all that surprised. He just didn't come across my mind, I guess. So could be a good pick.
I'm digging deep, man. Got to dig deep.
Oh yeah. For me, who I'm high on this week, I took a bit of a shot on this first one here. I have Ben Tate on my high list. No, he hasn't played yet this year, but yes, I have him, or he might have played early.
Yeah, he played, I think, the first game or two.
Yeah. But yeah, he's supposed to come back healthy this week, and once he is healthy, they're going to throw him right into the starter role. So that's definitely a positive, and the fact that his matchup is Tennessee doesn't hurt him at all. So I think that he brings the balance to Cleveland, and like I said, Tennessee's not that good against the run, and he could just be fresh because he hasn't been playing for 4 weeks. So, and then the second guy I have is Keenan Allen. Number 1 wide receiver against the Jets. He's Chargers wide receiver, obviously. His stats aren't all that good this year when I looked at it, which is kind of startling and sucks if you drafted him as a wide receiver because you might have drafted him high.
Yes, I did.
But he had 135 yards last week, which is a good game, obviously, against Jacksonville. And the Jets are just as bad against the pass as Jacksonville, at least fantasy-wise. They give up nearly as many points to wide receivers as Jacksonville does. So Phillip Rivers is smoking hot right now. Ride the hot hand while you get it, and he's got to give it to somebody. And Eddie Royals had 2 touchdowns 2 weeks in a row, and I don't see him doing that again. He kind of runs in spurts, so it's just a matter of time before he flames out again. And I think Keenan Allen goes big on this one. So.
Yeah, I almost put Eddie Royal on my don't buy the hype list this week. I think Keenan Allen does have a good week this week. I think he's going to start, he had I think his first couple weeks last year were a little slow too, and then he kind of came on towards the middle of the season. I think now's the time that you're going to start seeing him put up some good numbers. And Ben Tate, I agree. I mean, he had 7 yards per rush in his first game, 6 carries for 41 yards, till he got hurt. So, if he is 100% healthy and they say they're going to start him, then put him right in. I have no problem with that. I think they have a decent run blocking line, I guess. I mean, it seems like everybody runs relatively well over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ben Tate looked good that week 1 before he got hurt, and so I'm anxious to see him and see what he can do when he comes back. And obviously, like you guys said, they're going to throw him right in the starting role. He didn't lose his job to the other two guys. Keenan Allen, maybe it's because I did maybe not waste is the right word after only 4 weeks, but because I did spend a high draft pick. I think I'm a little more down on Keenan Allen, and I think I'm a little higher on Eddie Royal than you guys are. His targets have been there week in and week out, and I think that maybe we're seeing something that he hasn't done in a long time, so I can understand why he probably could belong on the don't buy the hype train. But I think Eddie Royal actually may be legit this year, and I think because of that, I think we're seeing less production out of Keenan Allen. So I'm actually a little more down on him. I hope you're right, Steve, because again, I have him in the league that I'm in with you, and he'll be in my lineup. But yeah. I'm not as high on him as you are right now, and I'm definitely a little higher on Eddie Royal than the both of you.
Yeah, I think Joe, you haven't done your highs yet, so
no. So I went with one. I went with a tandem the way you did last week, so I like that. So I went with Rashad Jennings and Andre Williams against
you guys
Atlanta.
Are just cheating. Jeez.
Yeah, how about? Well, we're gonna get double greens or double reds, so we'll find out.
If one's red and one's green, I'm just gonna give you a red now.
I agree. So I think Atlanta's deep run defense is really bad right now. You saw what both Vikings running backs did last week. So I think both of them can put up really solid numbers. I think Rashad Jennings is a running back 1 this week, an RB1. He should be in your top 10 probably, top 12 definitely. And I think depending on how you are with Andre Williams and how you look at running back, I think he could actually be a sneaky flex play this week because I think he is going to get enough carries to possibly do some damage. And if he gets a touchdown, I think you're going to be pretty happy from him in your flex. So I think Andre Williams is maybe a bold pick as a flex play, but I think especially Rashad Jennings, I love his matchup this week. And the other guy I think I pretty much cheated on, but the reason I just put him in there is because Arizona is so bad against tight ends, and that's Julius Thomas.
I hope he gets
so
one
obviously
point.
If you have Julius Thomas, you're starting him. But I was going to put this caveat out there. So if he does not finish as the number 1 tight end this week, I think you should give me a red. That's how confident I am in Julius Thomas.
I'll take that
against Arizona. So even if he finishes second to any other tight end,
Delaney Walker,
and that because obviously me picking Julius Thomas is like saying I'm picking Andrew Luck as he's gonna probably put up pretty good numbers. So I realize it's kind of cheating. So I'll put that little caveat out there. If he's not number 1, give me the red. I'm that confident in him this week. What do you guys think, Steve?
Well, I actually have Rashad Jennings in an upcoming category, so stay tuned for that, everyone.
Right.
And it could be it'll be fun to see what Andre Williams does. I didn't actually think about him, but Atlanta certainly is terrible against the run. So I think if Andre Williams hits, that's a good call by you, and if somebody plays him in the flex and gets rewarded for it, that's good work. And then I actually have Julius Thomas as my number 2 tight end, so.
That's
I was high on him until Joe put the caveat in. So.
That would be red.
Red for Joe. But, I mean, either way, he's going to have a good week. But I'm going to go red. How about that?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I was going to disagree with you for Andre Williams, but then I realized he actually had 2 more carries than Rashad Jennings last week. So I don't think both of them get you a green. I think one of them does, but I don't know who. I mean... Yeah, I'd like to think Rashad Jennings, but
I think with Andre Williams, I think if you watched the game and looked at Rashad Jennings' carries, the week before he had like 36 total touches, and then had to come back on a Thursday
short
night.
Week. Yeah, that's a good point.
It was a really short week, and especially after you touched the ball, it was either 34 or 36. He had that many total touches, so it was in the game plan beforehand to give Andre Williams more touches. So I know that there was talk at the beginning of the year because especially I think game 1 Andre Williams looked great in the preseason. So the whole talk was, who's going to be the net running back? And then Jennings just clearly was the better running back, and I still think he is now. I don't think you should be fooled by the number of carries Andre Williams had last week. But that being said, because Atlanta's so bad, I could see them running the ball all day, which will give Andre Williams enough touches to be productive.
Okay. And then for Julius Thomas, I agree, but I don't think he ends up getting number 1. So I think you'll end up red.
Well, okay. We'll find out.
Let's move on to our lows. I'm going with Trent Richardson. Did I only put one guy on here? I think I did. I'm going
So
with
did Joe.
I'm
How
going
many
with
outcasts are putting 2?
Trent Richardson against the Baltimore Ravens. He's getting the carries, but his yards per carry is still no good, and the Ravens are very good against the rush. That might be a little bit of a cheat too. But Steve, you talk about Trent Richardson going to your lows, and I'll find another guy I'm low on while you're talking.
Yeah, for me, I'm not, and I agree with you, but I have agreed with you all year long. At this point, I'm way more into the Ahmad Bradshaw camp than the Trent Richardson camp. So I'm not didn't disagree with you at all if you put Trent Richardson on your low list for the rest of the year. I think it would kind of be a cop-out, but you can do it if you want, and I'll agree with you.
That's right up Adam's alley.
Yep,
Good old cop-out.
sure is.
What do you
Speaking
think?
of cop-out, Steve, tell us your first running back on the low list.
Alfred Morris, baby.
Yeah.
They're playing the Seahawks, by the way, who have an extra week of rest, and people are going to tell them how bad they are on the road because it's a Monday night game. So they're going to get all the press and tell them that they stink on the road and they can't win on the road, and they're a Jekyll and Hyde team. So that's going to make the defense awfully mad, and you're not going to like them when they're angry, as I wrote down here. So I don't see Alfred Morris doing much of anything. I don't see any of the Redskins doing much of anything on Monday night against the Seahawks. So Alfred Morris starts my first low list. And then the second guy I have on my low list is Alex Smith, who I guess people would consider, well, wouldn't he be low every week? But so far this year, he has 891 yards, almost 900 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 3 picks, which, I mean, it's not bad as far as fantasy goes. But this week they're at San Francisco. So, I mean, San Francisco, they made Foles look terrible last week. They're a pretty good defense, and he's going to be on the road. So, as far as his value goes, I'm not all that excited for Alex Smith, and I'm assuming that you would have him as one of 2 quarterbacks. So, kind of like Andy Dalton a couple weeks ago, like I said, I would play the other quarterback that I have rather than Alex Smith.
Yeah, I agree with you on both. I mean, Alfred Morris has been running really well this week, so it's hard. You know, I'm not going to bench him necessarily, but I'm not expecting, maybe like 9 points out of him, 7, 9. If he can get a touchdown, that might save, or it'll definitely save him, in my opinion. And then Alex Smith, I agree. I almost thought about putting him on like a high list, but because guys generally play pretty well against their former teams, like we saw Steve Smith do this past week, and we didn't actually talk about it last week, but I meant to mention that, as much we like Steve Smith last week, he's probably going to have a good game. I didn't think he'd have that good of a game, but yeah, I think Alex Smith is kind of an exception to that. I just think the Niners defense is too good, and I actually like Kaepernick to more kind of have a better game to maybe not prove, but to show that, he was the right choice when they switched from Alex Smith. I'm not high on Alex Smith either. Joe?
No, you guys said everything I was going to say. I think Alfred Morris, even though I joked around and said it was a cop-out, I mean, he's one of those guys who's just been so consistent. He's almost been basically, someone you could start no matter who they're playing. And like you said, Adam, I think you probably still have to start him this week. He's tough to sit any week, even if they are playing Seattle, because if the Redskins are going to have any success at all against Seattle, they're going to have to establish a run game because Cousins isn't going to beat them. So maybe because of that, he gets you a touchdown. And I agree, Alex Smith. I think people forget, especially in Philadelphia, that Andy Reid can have a quarterback that is successful. He's always done well with quarterbacks, and he's done well. Alex Smith actually put up solid numbers last year. He may have I'd have to look at the rankings, but he probably finished just outside the top 12 in fantasy football total points last year in quarterback rankings. So. Most weeks I think he's starting to get to the point where on bye weeks, or if you're in a 2-quarterback league, you may feel comfortable starting him. But I agree, this weekend I would not feel comfortable starting him. My low list, I have Montee Ball. He's facing a tough run defense against Arizona. Arizona has not allowed more than 64 yards to a running back this year in a game. Combined, they've let up more than that to more than one running back. But Rashad Jennings is the only running back to hit 64 yards. So I think Montee Ball, he's got a tough stretch coming up here the next few weeks. So if you're a Montee Ball owner, in my opinion, you got to hang on because I think he's going to be somebody who can, maybe be somebody really strong going down the stretch heading in the playoffs. But the next couple weeks, if you look at his upcoming schedule is pretty tough. The other guy I have on my low list this week is Darren Sproles, not because I don't think that he can run against St. Louis, but I think all of the talk here in Philadelphia really has just been about why isn't Shady being Shady? Why isn't he having the amount of carries, or why isn't he getting the touches? Why isn't he getting the yardage? And I think we hit on it already, and I'm going to talk about him in a little bit in my zero to hero category. I think this week is the week that they are going to really try to feed Shady the ball and get him back on track so everybody can stop asking the questions and all that other stuff. So I just think that not because Darren Sproles can't be successful, I just think that they're going to really rely on Shady this week. What do you guys think?
Steve, we'll start with you because then I'll go to my second low guy.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I tend to agree with you on both of them, actually. And it's kind of looking at just like you picked two good defense matchups. In the sense that Arizona is really good against the run. Monty Ball hasn't done too much. I don't know. Maybe Denver had a bye last week. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe with the extra rest, the extra week of preparation, Peyton Manning comes out gangbusters. But that also means he's probably going to throw it around instead of run it around. I would think that I have Monty Ball. I'm still playing Monty Ball because I took him early. But at the same time, I wouldn't expect much from him. Kind of like in the case of Alfred Morris. And then Darren Sproles, I agree with Darren Sproles. As much as awesome as he's been so far, I think it's only a matter of time before Darren Sproles doesn't score a ton of points anymore. Just because, like last week he had a punt return for a touchdown, and one week he had a 50-yard run for a touchdown. Like, he's kind of a big hitter. So
right.
when you're counting on those plays, you can just ask Torrey Smith and Cordell Patterson and people like that how that works out week to week. So I think you're onto something here with Darren Sproles. And the hype slowing down and maybe picking up on LaShawn McCoy. So I agree with you on both.
Yeah, unless I'm in a deep, maybe like a 16 team, 14 team PPR, maybe even a 12. Sure. I'm not sure because I do think they're gonna put up a lot of points this week against St. Louis. But maybe in a 12 PPR, I'm starting Sproles perhaps in like a flex or something like that. But yeah, any other league, I'm on board with you there. Monte Ball, same. Like he's another guy that I'm kind of worried about. Like if I'm an Eddie Lacy, if I had Eddie Lacy and Monte Ball, I'm sweating bullets right now. As far as my running back situation, because neither of them have looked really good this year, and he hasn't looked good, and he's facing a tough Arizona team. So, oddly enough, those seem to be the games that, watch, he'll have 17 carries for 100 yards and a touchdown, but, he shouldn't, the way he's been playing. So, hopefully the bye week straightens him out a little bit. But, yeah, I'm worried going into this week as well, so I would agree with you. And then I quick found another guy for me for a low, and I'll go C.J. Spiller going against the Lions because the Lions are good against the run, and he's still splitting some time with Fred Jackson. And it's kind of... he had twice as many carries as Fred Jackson did last week, but the Bills, there's no rhyme or reason to who they give more carries to. I think it's just who's running better. So, you could very easily see them be tighter in carries this week. And it's against a tough Lions defense, and Kyle Orton starting at quarterback this week, so maybe they'll sling it with Orton. Who knows? But yeah, just right now I'm not high on Spiller this week.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I wanna thank you for including someone so I can bring up I'm tired of guessing on committee. I believe I made them co-vice president with Fred Jackson last week, or that maybe it was Sammy Watkins and I got confused. But C.J. Spiller's in the committee as well.
I think you invited both of them into that club.
Yeah. Everybody's invited on the Bills. So I agree that if you're going to put them on a low list, I can see it. And I think that I wouldn't be excited at all if I had C.J. Spiller going forward.
Thanks for listening to Primetime Fantasy Football. Send your questions into primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. And make sure to check out our weekly rankings, nextlevelradioonline.com, and go to the Primetime Fantasy Football tab. We'll post the link on Twitter and Facebook at NXT Level Radio or facebook.com/nextlevelradioonline.
This is Kevin Murphy, former voice of Tom Servo and current voice of Kevin Murphy. And you are listening to Next Level Radio.
He was a no one, a zero.
Prime time fantasy football's 0 to hero.
All right, first up on 0 to hero, I have Nick Foles, like I kind of hinted at earlier. I think the Eagles are going to put up a lot of points this week, maybe maybe not a lot, like 50, but, at least 30. I think he throws for about 3 touchdowns. Plays the Rams, 5.9 points last week, which is terrible. The Rams are kind of the middle of the pack against the pass coming off a bye, but the last time Foles scored single-digit points, he threw for 7 touchdowns the following week. So, I'm adjusting for that. But, yeah, I think...
Make the declaration.
Yeah, I think put
you
it
get
in...
a red if he doesn't throw 7 touchdowns.
Lock it in there. Anytime Foles scores single-digit points, he's going to have a huge game the next week. So I'm going with Nicky Foles. How about you guys?
Yeah, I hope you're right. I think the Eagles' offense gets back on track this weekend, and I don't know if that's just wishful thinking on my part as a fan, but I like that. I think Nick Foles is they're going to put up enough. He's going to get enough attempts to put up some points, and if Riley Cooper maybe starts catching some of these touchdowns that he's dropped 2 now, maybe he could be helped out. So maybe if he's getting some help in the end zone, but Nick Foles does have to. I'll be honest with you, as somebody who was high on Nick Foles coming into the season. He's just missing some wide open receivers right now. He's throwing deep. The touch has not been on there that it was there last year. Right now, and I don't know if that's just he's scared of the line because they are. It is such a banged up line right now, so I'm not exactly sure what the reason is. I hope you're right. If I had to go with it, I'd probably disagree with you though. I haven't seen enough from Foles, even when he does have the time to throw, to put him in my hero category.
Well, you're wrong, but Steve, let's get your opinion.
On what we call here.
I hope I'm wrong. Again, this is one I hope I'm wrong on.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what we call the hero category.
20 points.
But I do think that the Eagles are... Okay, then you're wrong. Because if for no other reason, the Eagles are going to score a lot of points because Chip Kelly's pride hurts right now. He's the offensive coach, and they didn't score a point last week on offense. Yeah. So they're going to score, but I don't know that Nick Foles is going to score 20 points this year. I'm just not excited about the way that he's playing. He's turning the ball over a lot more, but he might get close. But if 20 points is what calls him a hero, then I'm not too excited about that one for you, bud. My 0 to hero, and this is where we foreshadowed. I have Rashad Jennings on my 0 to hero list. So, Joe, to answer your question, I am high on Rashad Jennings. He only had 5.2 points last week. This week they're playing the Falcons, like Joe mentioned. They're terrible against the run. And Rashad Jennings can catch it a little bit, and they also give up points out of the backfield to guys who can catch it a little bit. It might not be too much, but they can catch a little bit. And Jennings has been alternating good and bad weeks so far, so in my illogical reasons, he's due for a good week this week. And he's also, Joe alluded to it a little bit, that Jennings is on pace for 324 carries this year, which is a ridiculous amount. So he's getting the work, and all he has to do is take advantage of it, and I think he does that this week. So I have him on my heroes list.
Yeah, other than, kind of what we had talked about a little bit ago, I guess I'll just add that, I think on a longer week now, now that he had some time to rest a little bit, I think they feed him the ball again this week, like Joe had mentioned earlier.
I hear that.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said, so I'll just move on to my 0 to hero, and this is the reason why I'm not as high on Nick Foles as I have LaShawn McCoy. I think
Screen
he's going to be the guy
passes.
Yeah, that could be it. So the Rams have allowed 100-plus rushing yards to the last 2 running backs that they faced. I think Chip Kelly's just going to make the run game a priority this week, especially now that they've got Lane Johnson back, which means Todd Herremans can move back to his spot at right guard. So they do have the right guard or the right side of the line back intact, and you still have Jason Peters out on the left-hand side. And I just think it's a home game for the Eagles. I think he is going to be somebody who is going to go off this week. And maybe it's not the kind of 150 yard, but I think he's going to find the end zone. And if he puts up 70, 80, 90 yards at this point, you've got to be pretty happy with McCoy on that. So, I think I wouldn't be surprised if he's well over 100 yards and a touchdown or so.
Yeah, Joe going complete 180 on McCoy between weeks. Low this last week, high this week. And that's what we do. It's per the matchup. So, I'm going to agree. I pretty much everything you just said. And I know, Joe, I think we talked about this off air like earlier this week about McCoy being like a buy low, and I had even like talked to the Calvin Johnson owner in a league, or I mean the LeSean McCoy owner in a league, and I have Calvin Johnson, and I asked him if he would consider that, and he's saying he is. Now, if you're the McCoy owner, do you trade him for Calvin, or if you're the Calvin Johnson owner, do you trade him for McCoy? Joe, and since you were high on him this week, we'll start with you.
I think it depends on what you look like at each position. Now, if you've got some really solid receivers already,
I have Floyd and Cobb. So,
see, if you're in that situation where Cobb is playing like a number 1 and Floyd is playing like a number 2, and then you can go and upgrade your running back position with Shady, I think that's a no-brainer for you. And if depending on how the other guy, maybe he's got 3 solid running backs. Maybe he has Jennings and somebody else, and he's comfortable doing that, but his wide receivers stink. So I think that could be a trade that works out for both parties.
Steve?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Joe just said. That was a really great point he made. I think there's a chance that this is a win-win, right. And it really depends on what your situation's like. And I think that's a fun one to do.
That's like a blockbuster.
Like a superstar type trade. That's a fun one. And if you're set at wide receiver, then trade him. And if you're set at running back, go ahead and trade McCoy.
I just think if you can get McCoy now, if you can get by on the in the next like 4 to 5 weeks, we're in week 5. If you can get to like week 9 or 10 and be in good shape to make the playoffs, I think you can make a good playoff run if he's on your team. Like, I think later in the year, once the O-line gets healthy again and they get things clicking, and even if the O-line doesn't get healthy, the guys, the backups are going to start gelling a little bit. And I just think once that O-line solidifies a little better, you're going to see more big games from him down the stretch.
I agree. And I think Mathis and Kelsey, it was reported this week that they're eyeing a week 10 comeback. And, being in week 5, it seems so long from now. But
so if you have Josh Gordon and LeSean McCoy, week 10 hits, your money.
Oh,
your money.
Or I guess week 12 is
now, but your money.
Week 12 is when Gordon comes back, but still.
Now that we're talking about LeSean McCoy a little bit, since we just finished off with Jennings, there was a Twitter question from one of our listeners at Robert Bogard. He said, "I need your help." He wants to know: would you trade McCoy and Andre Johnson for Rashad Jennings and Demaryius Thomas?
Well, that's a fun one.
It's a really tough one because I'll tell you where I'm at with that. I just told you that I'm big on McCoy going forward. I am a little nervous. I think he gets back on track this weekend, but we've already talked about Andre Johnson. I am real close to hitting the panic button on him. The targets have been there, but he's not finding the end zone. Jennings, on the other hand, has been really good, but because the number of touches he has long term, I'm becoming nervous. And Demaryius Thomas hasn't really performed like the first round pick that he's been. So I think that's a really tough one. What would you guys do? If you're the McCoy, it sounds like he's got McCoy and Andre Johnson. Would you trade those two for Rashad Jennings and Demaryius Thomas? Adam.
I think it's hard for me to trade away McCoy. I have no problem trading away Andre Johnson. It's hard for me to trade away McCoy, but honestly, I think getting Thomas and Jennings, at least for the barring injuries, I think you get the better end of that deal. I just think the difference between Andre Johnson and Demaryius Thomas from here to the end of the season is going to be much larger than the difference between Rashad Jennings and LeSean McCoy.
I think you just nailed it. I think that's exactly what it is. That's what that's obviously that's what it comes down to. But I think you nailed it on the head.
So you guys would both make that trade for Jennings and Thomas.
I don't know if I'd have the balls to pull the trigger and get rid of McCoy, but I think you're getting the better end if you get Thomas and Jennings.
It's always easier to tell guys that who they can trade, isn't it?
Yeah.
When it's your own guy.
Do it.
and you get nervous. Well, that's good. So, all right. So, I'd say I actually kind of agree. I think you should do it. I think I've said this for the past 6 weeks on the podcast. I was high on Jennings from the beginning of the year. I think the fact that they have Andre Williams and he actually is running well, I think that you're going to see some of Jennings' numbers down, but I think he's still going to be productive. And I should say his touches may go down a little bit, but he's still going to do a lot with those touches. And the Jets, as much as I hate to admit it, they're starting to gel right now on offense. As bad as they were in the preseason, by the way. It is. It's unbelievable. The worst offense you've ever seen. They couldn't complete a pass more than 10 yards through 4 preseason games, and now it's looking like they know what they're doing. They're getting their offense together. So I think Jennings going forward, if Jennings can stay healthy, and obviously that's a key with a lot of these guys. I like the Jennings, Demaryius Thomas end better than McCoy, Andre Johnson.
Yeah, I would agree.
So I said, at Robert Bogard, pull the trigger.
Pull it. Let's move on to the Don't Buy the Hype this week. I got Brandon LaFell going up against the Bengals. He had 17.9 points last week. We talked about the Bengals. If you're low on Brady, you kind of have to be low on everybody over there. He's not even, the second best receiver on the team. I just think, with Edelman, Gronk there, Vereen, I just don't think you can rely on him to get 17.9 points. I think he goes easily single digits, and I think he might go under 5 this week.
Well, my question is, I didn't see the game. I only saw the score. How the hell did he score 17.9 points last week?
He had a couple big plays.
Okay. Well, so I guess I would assume that I would have thought he caught both touchdowns or something like that. But
no, he had one touchdown. 6 catches on 8 targets for 119 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, I just don't see it happening, especially against the Bengals. And I've already talked a little bit about how low I am on the Patriots offense. We kind of all have, actually, and Tom Brady and all that stuff. So I completely agree with you there.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing else to add to it.
Well, I'll go then. Larry Donnell is who I have.
I think it's Donnell, but that's okay.
Is it Donnell? Yeah.
Who cares?
We can edit that out. They're playing Atlanta. And however it works, Atlanta defends the tight ends really well this year. And I think his numbers are really inflated by touchdowns. He doesn't really ever have more than 50 yards. He had one game, but he's really pretty much consistently at 50 yards. He scores a lot of touchdowns, but touchdown-dependent guys, they worry me, especially against a team that defends that position well. So I'm going to say don't buy the hype on Larry Donnell this week.
I have. It's tough because Eli's really looking at him in the red zone, which is why he is getting those touchdowns. But I guess it goes on the matchup. So I would agree just because of the matchup, and I think maybe in the red zone they try and maybe run it a little more with Jennings and Williams. I don't know, but good long term, I'm okay with Donnell. Especially if you're the guy you drafted is hurt. This week you still probably have to start him. You can't bench a guy after you just got that huge week last week. But I'm not expecting. I would agree with you. If he doesn't have a touchdown, forget about it.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and disagree with both of you. I think that although I agree with what you're saying with the matchup this week, because it is a tough matchup. He's obviously, I don't think you can count on 3 touchdowns, but Eli's favorite targets not only has been Donnell, it's been tight ends. I'm trying to look up the numbers real quick now, but I know he's got the 3 touchdowns, and I think they have another tight end on their team that has 2 touchdowns this year. So if I'm correct, and I'll look that up, that would be 5 total touchdown passes, all from tight ends. So I think that is one of his favorite looks in the red zone, and I do agree he is a little touchdown dependent. But the way that Eli's looking for them, I think that he's going to score a touchdown if they're in that red zone. So, for fun purposes, I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you.
Okay, but if the Giants' offense, not hiccups, but if they rely more heavily on the run and they don't quite get as many red zone, opportunities or first and goals, second and goals, then you're SOL.
Yeah, I agree, but we already talked about how Atlanta's bad against the run. I don't think they're going to have an issue getting into the red zone this week. And again,
they rip off 50-yard runs for touchdowns.
Well, 3 or 4 5-yard runs in a row, and they've got a couple first downs. I don't want to admit it, but like I said, the Giants' offense is clicking now.
I don't want to tell you not to pick against us, but give us your don't buy the hype.
You're also talking about Daniel Fells for all those listeners out there that are hungry for information. Daniel Fells has 3 touchdowns this year for the Giants.
There you go. Thank you very much. So, all right, my don't buy the hype is Mike Glennon. He actually put up good numbers, but it was against Pittsburgh, and their defense is really struggling right now. So unless you're really desperate and you're in a 2 QB league, or maybe you're the Tom Brady owner and there's no one else left out there, to be honest with you, I didn't. Let me look to see, where do you have Glennon compared to Brady?
I have
2 spots behind.
You do have him below. if you're just that frustrated, I wouldn't blame you for wanting to start Mike Glennon over Brady this week. But you're probably right in that ranking of keeping Glennon below him. But
look in the mirror and say, I'm going to start Mike Glennon over Tom Brady, and then see if you still can do it.
Well, I think I told you this last week. I got to a championship last year with Mike Glennon as my starting quarterback. So
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody in your league was pissed off.
They were not happy. Let's put it that way.
Either that or they never watched football before.
Yeah, it was with a bunch of third-grade girls. But anyway, so I wouldn't buy the hype. I mean, the numbers were good for him, but defense, the Pittsburgh defense right now is pretty porous. So I wouldn't put too much into that.
I would agree with what you're saying there, and obviously we've been over it. I have Mike Glennon as 21st on my quarterback rankings this week, so I certainly wouldn't buy that hype as well. So.
Prime Time Fantasy Football presents Dig It or Ditch It.
All right, so for this week's Dig It or Ditch It, we'll go through these kind of quickly. Let's start off with Bishop Sankey. Digging or ditching him as the clear number one back in Tennessee, and digging or ditching a possible flex this week versus the Browns. And let me just preface this before you give your answers. Ken Wisenhunt,
Dig it.
Ken Wisenhunt came out and said today that he'll likely get more reps this week against the Browns than he has all season. Because apparently his footwork's better now, guys. The footwork is okay now.
I've heard more about this guy's footwork in the last
seriously, it's
so.
like
Ready for football.
What is Ken Wisenhunt, Kevin Bacon over there? Like, what the hell is going on? So you guys digging or ditching? We'll start with Steve.
I am going to dig it because why not? Yeah. I mean, sometimes you put stock in what the coach says, and I am forever anti Sean Green. So Bishop Sankey is fine with me if you want to put him in a flex against the Browns.
Joe?
I also dig it because I'm not sure if you guys heard this, but they're talking about how good his footwork has looked all week in practice. So I do. I think Sankey's going to be good, and I think if you are the guy who took a chance on Sankey and you hung on to him this long, I think you're going to be rewarded. I think you're only going to see better things from him going forward. So I dig it for this week, and I'm also digging it long term.
Yeah, I think I had said, I don't know if it was to one of you guys, but I said I think by week 8 you're really happy with having Sankey in your flex moving forward, and it might be as early as this week 5. I mean, he had.
You said it to me when I tried to get him from you.
Yeah, there it is. Sankey, I mean, he had they only rushed it a total of 16 times. 5 of those was Whitehurst. 6 of them was Sankey. Green only had 3. McCluster had 2. So, I think they're going to run the ball more just in general, and Sankey's going to get all the carries, so I'm digging both of those. Let's move on. Kelvin Benjamin. He has been a top 10 wide receiver 3 of the 4 weeks so far. You digging or ditching him as a wide receiver 2 against the Bears this week, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, top 10 is a lot different than wide receiver 2. so I think, I like Kelvin Benjamin. And
all right, would you dig or ditch him as a wide receiver 1?
I would ditch him as a wide receiver 1 because I'm not all that confident. I said there was a shootout capabilities and thing like that. So at risk of contradicting myself, I'm not all that excited about Cam Newton. Just as of yet, I think obviously he's going to work out and as he continues to play and get over his injuries. But for this week, I'm not exactly trusting Kelvin Benjamin as a wide receiver 1.
But you're going 2.
Wide receiver 2 for sure. High wide receiver 2 with upside. So I'm playing him with confidence to answer your question.
Joe?
I think I'm going to dig him as a wide receiver 1.
Whoa!
Probably a 12-team. I haven't done my rankings yet, but just knowing some of the matchups going into this week, I think I'm going to have him probably in that 10 to 12 range. So when the rankings come out tomorrow, I'll tell you. And I'll be honest with you, that was a surprising stat that you put up there that he was top 10 3 of the 4 weeks. I did not realize that. So
being that this is presented by Next Level Radio, we give some next level statistics, Joe. Maybe you want to catch up to that real quick.
You're right. So that's pretty impressive. So I dig it as a wide receiver 1 this week.
Now that the Bull Wallace and James Jones are on a bye this week, Joe has no choice but to put Kelvin Benjamin up.
Yeah, I had him at 13 with Wallace and James Jones at 10 and 11. Now put them out. So
I mean, definitely for me, digging as a 2, and I'm kind of on Steve's board. Like maybe like in a 12 team, maybe he's borderline. Maybe I would have him at like 13 or 14. But I mean, he leads the team in targets week to week. I mean, it seems almost other than Greg Olsen. I mean, Cotchery has some good games, but other than Greg Olsen, it seems like Cam's always looking at Benjamin. And God forbid Cam gets hurt. If Derek Anderson comes in, I actually almost like him even more because Derek Anderson looks to him like he is looking in the mirror. So yeah, I'll dig that. Let's move on to this Teddy Bridgewater article. Steve, you want to take over?
Yeah, well, the article is called "Phew, Teddy Bridgewater is feeling better and on track to play Thursday." So I won't read the whole article because it's quite long and it would take up a lot of time. But essentially, it's a Slurp article on Teddy Bridgewater that you can find on Yahoo's fantasy page. I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess he played well last week, which is great. But it's a Thursday game, and the guys play one NFL game. So
and by the way, phew, it's like PHEW, not FEW. So it's like phew.
Like phew, like that kind of thing. Where it's
thank goodness.
It's got to be a drop.
Like it's his savior is that Teddy Bridgewater is playing. So now he's going to win the fantasy Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I mean, my dig it or ditch it question, I guess, is: are you as excited about Teddy Bridgewater this week as apparently this expert on Yahoo's fantasy site is?
Phew. Actually, no. This guy has done a few too little fantasy research of the FEW kind. Look, I like Teddy Bridgewater going forward for the rest of the year. As far as rookie quarterbacks go, I think Steve's got Bortles. He's got him as his horse. I got Bridgewater as mine. Joe's got Derek Carr or something. I don't know, Johnny Manziel. I just don't like it. It's a short week. He's not going to be healthy. He might not even play. But next week if he's healthy, I'm okay with putting in the PHEW. But for this week, why? Why are you so excited he's on track to play?
Why.
There we go.
I'll tell you why. I am not high on Bridgewater this week at all. But who is their backup? Who's going to be the guy that would start?
It's
exactly.
Christian Ponder.
That's exactly why the article is phew.
Is it Christian Ponder?
Yeah.
Exactly, because it's either him or Christian Ponder, and they don't stand a chance to win if it's Christian Ponder. So no, I'm not. I am excited long term for Teddy Bridgewater. He would not be in my lineup this week, but if I'm a Vikings fan and he's going to be ready, I am absolutely saying, phew.
We're good at
so
this.
I'm digging that.
We need to find a way to put this into a segment. I don't know how.
Instead of dig it or ditch it, we'll have few.
Fewer.
So that's why. It's because it's Christian Ponder.
Okay.
Is
your
alternative.
All right. Well, this is fantasy, so you're not starting Christian Ponder either. Let's move on to take your pick, and then we'll get to one other tweet we had, and then we'll wrap up. So let's go take your pick, and we'll kind of do what we did last week. We'll go wide receivers this week. Call it the wide receiver roulette, if you will. Take your pick, Brian Quick or Kendall Wright this week.
Quick. Right.
All right, I'm going. I'm going Quick. Let's go, Alan Hearns or Allen Robinson.
I was just hoping somebody would pick Right for that reason.
Pick your Allen. Allen Hearns or Allen Robinson.
Hearns.
Penn State.
I'm gonna go Allen Robinson. He's just got the better talent.
Yes.
So you going Brian Quick or Allen Hearns?
Quick.
Well, I didn't pick either. That's not fair. Brian Quick.
I'm going Quick as well. Wright or Robinson?
Penn State.
I'm going Robinson. Right. I'm going Right. Wrong again. So let's go to. We didn't have a whole lot of wide receivers because we got a couple other positions on here. Take your pick. Who would you rather have? The Patriots running backs against the Bengals or the Bills running backs against Detroit to choose from? You can rank 1 to 4.
I'd probably go Bills. And
yeah, that's you gotta give me the players, Joe.
Yeah, I'm saying both.
Rank 1 to 4.
Spiller Jackson, Spiller Jackson, Vereen, Ridley.
I'm gonna go.
Can I mark them all as a number 4?
Yeah, that's the point of the question, guys. I'm gonna go Spiller, Vereen, Jackson, Ridley.
I'm gonna go Riddles.
Okay.
Spiller, Vereen, Jackson.
Did you just pick Ridley first? Joe and I both picked him fourth?
Sure did. I sure did. Take your pick, Russell Wilson.
Steve, that's these next level stats you're getting.
Dangerous. Russell Wilson against Redskins or Phillip against the Jets? Take your pick. Steve's got both. Who's he going to start? Joe, we'll start with you because you're not Steve.
Phillip.
Oh, man.
Wow, going Phillip. I would actually take Russell Wilson.
Yeah, you talked about this today. We were talking before the show, and you were excited about him. I don't know. I guess my strategy going forward, just because I ended up with Phillip Rivers, thanks to whoever dropped him so I could pick him up, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just going to go Phillip when the Seahawks are on the road, and Russell Wilson when the Seahawks are at home.
Yeah.
But this is definitely a good time to play him if he was on the road. Like, if I didn't have as good a backup as I have, then I wouldn't have any problem playing Russell Wilson this week.
Yeah, I mean,
if Russell Wilson were at home, I probably would have went with him.
He's a no-brainer at home for sure. On the road, it's kind of a question mark. And to me, I think, and I told you this earlier, Steve, so I'll just fill Joe in on our text conversation. I think they kind of probably score around the same amount of points, but Russell Wilson has more of an opportunity with those rushing yards and maybe even a rushing touchdown to get you. You know, I just think he has a slight bit more upside than Phillip Rivers does. But in the end, I think they end up getting you pretty close to the same amount of points.
Hear that?
Fair enough.
And both of them are good totals, yes? We're in agreement there?
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong. They'll probably both get 10 points this week.
Yeah.
All right, so last up, we got a tweet from @DubSnipes, Wes Koenig. He actually tweets us quite a little bit, so we thank you for listening and supporting the show. He wants you to pick two, Gio Bernard, Jamal Charles, or Rashad Jennings. Not like you can probably go wrong with any of these guys.
Yeah, good for him for having those three guys.
Right.
Take your pick.
He's in that same league that I was in last year with the third grade girls, I think.
Yeah, Mike Lennon, good.
Yeah.
Pick two of those guys. Joe, we'll start with you.
Gio and Charles. I think, especially when you saw what Charles came back and did last week. And I love Rashad Jennings' matchup this week. I mean, I put him in my high column. But Gio and Charles, I would sit Jennings for those guys.
Yeah, I kind of wish you had a flex there. It was Wes was his name?
Yeah.
I kind of wish you had a flex so you play off three of them. I don't know what else you have going on, but I would sit Jennings too, I guess. But like you said, you can't really go wrong. Don't overthink it. Don't stress about it because you got three good options. So just pick two and go with it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree. I mean, I love Gio in general. As you guys both know, and as anyone who listens to the podcast knows. And
why don't you marry him then?
he's playing Patriots Sunday night, so a primetime game. I always like guys in those primetime games, especially the big backs like that. But so I mean, you can't bench Charles for Jennings, but I wouldn't. If you told me Jennings is going to end up with more points than Charles, I wouldn't be absolutely surprised. But I mean, the way Jamal Charles ran it, the other. On Monday night against the Patriots, how can you bench him? And it's Jamal Charles. So, I would go Charles and Gio, but like Steve said, I wish he had a flex to put in Jennings because I think they're going to have, all three of them are going to have good weeks. And if you're short at if you're thin at wide receiver with those three guys, I wouldn't mind trading one of them for sure.
Yeah,
especially,
I would try. I'd try to trade Jennings to. Obviously, if he has those three top running backs right now, there's at least one, if not two teams that are really hurting at running back. And
for sure.
Again, I'm somebody who owns Jennings in I think 3 of my 4 leagues, and I am nervous going forward because of the number of touches he has. So now is probably the time to sell high if you can.
Yeah, you said it right there, sell high. I think that's definitely the opportunity you have.
Yeah, you might be able to get Jennings for Calvin Johnson maybe. Calvin Johnson's had a couple rough weeks. What do you think?
I don't know if you can pull off Calvin Johnson.
No,
I was thinking maybe someone I was thinking maybe
thinking.
Brandon Marshall. He's actually struggled a little bit right now. And
Jeffrey for sure, I would think.
I think Jeffrey for sure. And I'd maybe even start with someone like Brandon Marshall just because he's struggled a little bit. And
we'll start with Calvin. If you're aiming high, aim for Calvin.
Well, yeah, I don't think you want to. I don't think you want to offend the guy.
Screw it. It's fantasy football. Give me a break. Offend the guy.
I would never trade with you if you offered me that right away.
Well, you don't have either. Well, I actually have Calvin Johnson, and you have Rashad Jennings. You want to do this?
Do you want to make that trade?
I can afford to with Michael Floyd and Randall Cobb.
See how offended you were when I did that to you?
You're off the podcast. All right, so that's the end of the show for this week. Join us next week when we talk Week 6. We probably pretty soon. I know we're been in contact with a couple guys about a couple beat writers from around the league about having them on. So stick around. Stay tuned for that. Check out our rankings, nextlevelradioonline.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Just search for Primetime Fantasy Football, and then make sure you also search for and subscribe to the presenting station, Next Level Radio. And then follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/nextlevelradioonline. Twitter is at NXT Level Radio, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm at Adam Next Level. At JoeyWeb32 is Joe, and at SRichards31 is Steve. Tweet us up to the games, who you want to start, who you want to sit. We'll be sure to answer you. We're pretty quick with that. Check Steve's blog out, StephenRichards.net, and follow, if you're a Packers fan, make sure you follow Joe for sure on Facebook, because he spits useless knowledge about the Packers. Guys, you got anything to add?
No.
Nope. Let's just get off this thing.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. Good luck in Week 6.
Ever since I turned pro in 1980,